Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show in NYC, in New York City. That's right, we're just a half a block from Times Square, and I'm with my niece, Dr. Brooke Scheller. You're like, Dr. Brooke Scheller, how do I know that name? Yeah, because she just launched a best-selling book just weeks ago, How to Eat to Change How You Drink, and it is flying off the shelves worldwide. And well, we got her here in an interview today, and you're in for a real treat because we're talking life, we're talking family, and we're talking about her book, which is just awesome. And there's some great aspects of this book that I love. Her subtitle, Heal Your Gut, Get Your Mind Right. Mend your mind and improve nutrition to change your relationship with alcohol. Let me tell you what, my friends, you're going to love this conversation. We have a lot of fun, but so that Brooke gets her proper due, listen to her bio and get ready for what will be an absolutely iconic episode. Dr. Brooke Scheller is a doctor of clinical nutrition, the founder of Functional Sobriety, and the author of How to Eat to Change How You Drink, Heal Your Gut, Mend Your Mind, and Improve Nutrition to Change Your Relationship with Alcohol. After finding freedom from alcohol in 2021, Dr. Brooke was inspired to share her experience in sobriety and applied her expertise in nutrition and functional medicine to help others change their relationship with alcohol and heal their body from long-term alcohol use. Her approach results in improved brain health, mood, energy, focus, gut health, and hormone balance. In 2022, Dr. Brooke launched Functional Sobriety, a nutrition-based program for an alcohol-free lifestyle, which has expanded to serve members across the globe. Functional Sobriety provides a wellness-based community, education on healing from alcohol use with nutrition and functional medicine practices, and offers the first ever custom supplements for the sober and sober curious. As a motivational speaker, Dr. Brooke helps to spread the word about functional nutrition, alcohol-free wellness, and the power of sobriety. Dr. Brooke's been featured in publications like Oprah Daily, Forbes, Well Plus Good, Prevention Magazine, and of course, the Todd Durkin Impact Show. Yep, that's right. Had to add that one in there. Let me tell you what, you're in for a real treat today with the one and the only Dr. Brooke Scheller. Let's go there now. We're back to the Impact Show, baby. And we are in the NYC, New York City, and I'm so excited to have Brooke Scheller, Dr. Brooke Scheller, in the house.
Whoop, whoop.
My niece, Brooke, is in the house. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Actually, I would say you're in the house for me because this is my zone.
That's true.
This is my zone.
This is true. We are in New York, where Brooke lives, and but I got to tell you, I do feel like I'm at home. The last couple of days being in New York, it's been so great to be back home. And when I think of New York, it's Jersey, New York. Brooke grew up like I did in Brick, New Jersey. Shout out to all of our Brickites and all of our Jersey friends. But New York is special. And I was telling my man Chase, who's with me, there's so much life and energy in New York. Mm-hmm. And to do the Impact Show live here from NYC is special. You're going to feel the juice today. You're going to feel a little juju just because I'm hyped up. Brooke's hyped up. We just got done last night as we record this with her big book signing. By the way, did you get any rest last night?
I've got very minimal rest from last night, but I'm running on a lot of adrenaline. And you know what? This entire launch part of my life has just been so special. This has been such an amazing journey these past couple of weeks. And as you know, yesterday when the book launch happened, the book launched internationally on that same day. So it's been really special and really exciting. And I'm really excited to continue sharing this with everyone.
I can't wait to hear more about the book later in the show. How's it doing, by the way? It just came out end of December.
It's doing really well. It's trending in the top. It's taking the top 4 spots in its category on Amazon for the last couple of weeks. And it's been doing really well. I've been getting a lot of amazing feedback. And I just, my hope and my goal is that it brings some ideas and some change to impact people's lives.
Yeah. Well, if you're just listening in today, it's called How to Eat to Change How You Drink. Heal Your Gut. get your mind right and improve nutrition. Wait, it doesn't say get your mind right. It says mend your mind and improve nutrition to change your relationship with alcohol. And Dr.
I didn't want
Scheller.
to get sued for taking your tagline or anything.
Man, that would have been great. I was like, yes, more people are getting their mind right. And I want to talk about that later in the show. But let's just step back for a moment because in the last, just several years, you've, to me, taken this meteoric rise in the nutrition space. But I think of Dr. Brooke Scheller as little Brookie, and that girl growing up. I'm going to get emotional just because I watched you and your sister Sarah and your mom Judy, one of my 5 sisters, and your father, Brian, were at every football game in high school, every football game, and little Brooke and Sarah and Brian, were always there when I was playing, and I watched you grow up through that, and all the way into you wanting to be the next Jewel. You were a singer, and that was your dream. Talk about that, your dream growing up as a little girl wanting to be a singer, because the Scheller side of the family are musicians. It certainly doesn't come from the Durkin side, I can tell you that. But talk about that dream that you had as a young girl.
Yeah, so, ever since I was young, I've always been really called and inspired by music. And as a young girl, I was in love with Jewel, the singer-songwriter. She's still my favorite singer-songwriter. And when I look back and reflect on the role that she played in my life, I recognize that from a young kid, as a young child, have always been hyper emotional. I've always been really affected by my emotions. I've always connected with music because I've always felt very deeply. And it's funny because as we were getting set up in the studio, I was talking about how I was originally a music major in school, that I played instruments when I was younger, I sang, and when I was in my final year of high school, I was in a 2-year audio recording program, which is why originally I started as a music major. I was going to go to school to pursue music. And it was my 21-day transformation program that I did with you that started to shift me more into health and wellness, which is something I had always been interested in as well. But when I look back at the journey and how everything unfolded to lead to where I am today, it's really amazing. But I look back at that experience with being a musician and being inspired by artists like Jewel, that part of my emotional depth is also part of why I drank a lot of alcohol, because it really was something I struggled with, how to manage those emotions. And when I reflect back on all of this and the path that kind of led me here, it's really cool to see how all these things, even though I didn't stay as a music major, those things still influence my life today. And it's really cool to be able to get to tap into all those different arenas.
Yeah. If you were to ask anyone from the family back in the day, they would have said, absolutely, she's going to Broadway. She's going to be a singer.
Well, actually, ironically, we're on Broadway
That's
right
what I'm
now.
going to say. That's what I was going to say. Is like, look where we're at right now. We're in the heart of Times Square recording this podcast. And the impact, pardon the pun or not, that you're creating is just awesome. Before we go to the book side of things, I want to stay in this realm because in high school, and I knew some of it, but not certainly to the extent you share in the book, because you're very vulnerable in the book, and you even share how that was a real struggle for you to be so vulnerable, is you drank a lot starting at 12, 13 years old, and all through high school you hid it and no one really knew about it. Talk about that struggle in high school and drinking.
Yeah, well, I think many people start drinking in their teens. It's fairly common, and something that now that I work with people and changing their alcohol use behaviors, a lot of people start really young, and it's a very social thing. There's maybe a lot of peer pressure, and I had my first drink when I was 13, and by the time I was probably 16 or 17, I was drinking pretty regularly. And
what does that mean? How many times?
On the weekends. I mean, as a high schooler, how often do you have access to it? So maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but often enough that it was a part of my lifestyle. It was part of my friendships and my
Identity.
social circle,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
identity
Yeah.
for sure. And that continued throughout my 20s and into my early 30s. But when I look back now, it has a lot to do with trauma and things that happened in my teenage years, that when I was prior to quitting drinking a few years ago, I never really thought I drank because of pain or emotions, or that I was, trying to numb anything. But when I did quit drinking and look back, I realized that I had been since a young age. And I share that vulnerably because I know that I'm not alone in that feeling or that experience. And when I share it with other people, usually it touches people because they've been silently struggling, or maybe they had that similar experience and they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
It's really difficult to overcome, and it's something that is really hard for people to talk about. But, I also think it's really important. We're in this really exciting time and this shift around alcohol in our culture and our society. And so I share that, and I share vulnerably this story because I really do think we're in a season where we're going to be seeing more people start to walk toward the idea of sobriety, and know that you don't have to be an alcoholic or really have a problem to say, maybe this is negatively affecting my life in some way, and I can make that decision to quit.
So good, so good. Random question. Grandfather, sir, my dad. How old were you when he passed?
3.
3. So you don't remember him?
3 or 4. No, I don't.
Okay. Because I remember him vividly going over to the Scheller house, and it was Sarah and you and your father and mother, and he spent a lot of time over there, and I know he'd be real proud. As a writer, I was thinking about that last night at your book signing. I'm like, dang, like my dad, your grandfather would be dang proud. I know a lot of people are proud, but it's really big, Brooke. I know you know that, but I was thinking last night, man, Grandfather Sir, as the kids called him, Grandfather Sir would be dang proud of what you just did. So,
what's really interesting about that too is on the other side of my family, my dad's mother, she's a huge influence, and she's one of the dedications in the book. Yeah. She had 50 years of sobriety when she passed away, and I didn't know that until recently, and she passed away before I got sober. But I think about how she influenced my life and really spoke to me in the language of recovery or sobriety my whole life, and I didn't know that. Yeah. And so it's really cool to have these, so many people play a role in this journey, and I feel really inspired by, when I look back again at how all of these pieces come together in this really beautiful way to make this cool thing.
They're all
happen.
angels. They're all angels who help connect the dots. You're like, okay, how did that happen? They were angels at work. I believe that. There's no doubt. Just to fast forward a little bit back to the high school era, when you were in high school and you somehow graduated. Because I remember the principal, my friend Bill, saying, we got to...
Hey, I was 49th in my class.
49th?
Yeah, out of 409. I was top 10, almost top 10%.
49th or 409?
49th.
49th.
Out of 409.
Wow.
I was smart. I mean, so here's the thing.
Maybe it was P.
Yes, Dave Feely.
My man Dave. My shout out to my man Dave. He texts me like, man, we got to somehow get Brooke to at least dress out for PE.
I was kind of a brat when it came to that. But what's really interesting, and even throughout all of my drinking years, I achieved multiple graduate degrees. I had good jobs. I had all of these things where I was able to say, well, this couldn't really be affecting my life that much because look at all of these things I have, right? I was pretty high functioning in that regard where I was able to hold it together. And I share that because I think there's a lot of people who we have this perception that in order to have a problem with alcohol, or for alcohol to be something that we have to quit or stop drinking, that it has to be that we have to have a DUI, or we're homeless, or that there are these kind of extreme ends. And the reality is I didn't have any of these terrible things happen to me, but I was experiencing a ton of anxiety. I was extremely depressed. I knew that my life was not what I wanted it to be. And when I quit drinking, it didn't take very long for my entire life to change. And something I shared last night at the book launch is a big part of the story is I was 3 months sober when the idea hit me to write this book. And I had wanted to write a book for years. I had that goal kind of in the back of my head. I would write it down year after year on my yearly goals. And I never knew what it would be about. I never knew how to write it. I didn't know what the process looked like. I didn't know any of that. But when I did get sober and I allowed that space to clear in my life, all of these pieces started falling together. And I think that's really something important to share, because if you're listening and maybe you do have, or you're questioning your relationship with alcohol, or you're wondering if it's worth exploring time off of alcohol, that there's a lot of ways that your life will open up, and it's worth giving it a try. You know, we're in this era where we're in dry January right now. This is a huge trend that people, like year after year, we're seeing massive growth in trends like dry January and sober October. There is a booming non-alcoholic beverage space right now. We're seeing brands like White Claw launch 0% White Claws, which is really silly. It's basically a seltzer water. But there's a huge movement toward this idea of eliminating alcohol, and that, you know, we've really been misled that there are some health benefits to alcohol, and that, you know, maybe there are some ways that it's not so bad for us. Well, we're now really comparing it to tobacco. It's kind of a public health crisis, and it doesn't have any health benefits. The World Health Organization has already made statements to say no amount of alcohol is safe. And so now we're in this phase, and something I'm excited to do is really share with people that you don't have to have alcohol to have fun. You don't have to have it in your life, and that it can be a really fulfilling life without it.
Yep. So as we step through all of this, and great points there, as we step through this, I just want to fast forward to now. You're through high school, you graduate, and you're not going to college, and you're taking a little time off, trying to figure life out. And I'm not sure who I talked to or what came upon me, but I said, hey, Brooke, how about you come out to San Diego? I'll bring you out. You spend 21 days with me, and we'll do my 21-day life transformation program. I'll fly you out, and you got to be part all in. And you're like, yeah, I'm in. But I'm like, okay, well, here's what's all in means. We're working out every day. You're journaling every day. You're doing these exercises every day. You're like, well, I don't really like to work out. I'm like, well, that's why we're going to work out every day. Well, I don't love to journal. That's why we're going to journal every day. And you did that. You came out and you did 21 days. I didn't even have a life transformation program per se at the time.
I found that out last night, by the way, that wasn't a real thing yet.
It wasn't a real thing yet. It was, you were a test guinea pig, right? Like, but it was something that I created, a 21-day program with you to say, hey, if you could journal about your life and where you want it to be, what would it look like? Just take us back to that time if you could. Because I honestly didn't even know that until Melanie, my wife Melanie, said, did you hear what Brooke said about you on some podcast about the transformation program? Like, what 21-day program is she talking about? and then you wrote about it in the book. I didn't know the impact that had until just recently with the book coming out and all. But take us back to that time, and what did it mean?
Yeah, so I had been pursuing this audio program that I was in, which ironically I was just talking about here at the studio. And I had decided I was going to take a year off of high school. And this was all during the era where there was a lot of transition and stuff happening at home. And I think that when I look back now, I think I was a little lost, and you were like, hey, maybe I can have some type of influence here. And I don't even remember having a choice. Like, I kind of feel like you were like, you're coming. And I was like,
probably.
I don't know what. Okay, sure, fine. But prior to that, I mean, I had never really exercised before. I hadn't really
Heck, you even dressed out for PE.
Yeah, I wouldn't even get dressed for phys ed. Hey, Dave Feely. And so that really, I remember being really afraid to come out and do that and not really knowing what to expect. And man, I wish I had the papers of all that journaling that you had me do, because that would be interesting to see what that might look like today. But I remember that one of my most vivid memories of the whole thing was that you had me apply for community college while I was there. And this is before you did it online. I had to like fax the paperwork over to the college. And because of that, I registered for classes like 3 weeks before the semester started. And so what's really ironic too is I ended up making several friends in those classes, and and when I came back, I had started exercising. I had started going to the gym and all of that based on this transformation program I did. And I, at the time, was going to switch to an exercise science major. And I started taking some of the classes that might fit with that at community college, and one of them was a nutrition class. And so I took that class, and even recently my sister Sarah said, "You loved that nutrition class. Like, I remember you coming home and saying how much you loved it." And so when it became time for me to transfer, I was between kind of pursuing exercise science and nutrition, and for whatever reason pursued nutrition, and had no intention of getting a master's, like, albeit a doctorate. And so it really just kind of all unfolded. That program really did have a big impact and transformation on me. And I'm really grateful for you for dragging me out there.
I didn't make her sign up for college and fax her application. If I remember correctly, it was through looking at her dreams, goals, and visions is she would have needed a college education. And my whole philosophy in life is why wait, right? Like, if you want to do it, why wait? So next thing we know, you're filling out applications to the community college to get you back into the program of getting started. Like, why wait 6 months or 12 months? You might as well do it now. And the rest is history, because that started what you just shared about your process and journey of getting into more formal education or a higher education. And most importantly, gave you direction, gave you a focus of, hey, I like nutrition, like Sarah said, and you started following your passion on that. If you could speak to someone back, 18 to 20 years old, possibly, maybe a little lost, doesn't know if they want to go to college or they're in college, they don't know what major they want. Heck, maybe they're older and you just like, they're a little lost. Stepping back into that young Brooke Scheller, what would you recommend they do to find their ultimate purpose?
I have to say that all along, I've just really trusted my gut. I look at a lot of the decisions that I made in continuing my education, and the decisions that I've made throughout my life. A lot of them were just based on my intuition. I try often not to let outside noise come in or fear. I think a lot of times we have fear, right? Yeah. We hear like, oh, that's an expensive school, or that might be, are you sure that's something that you might want to do? And we hear a lot of noise from other people, but we're the only ones that know internally what's right for us. And I really believe that part of how I've ended up here and with the book and all of the accomplishments that I have today is really just based on feeling like I followed the thing that felt right. I followed the thing that felt like I was supposed to do, even if it felt a little hard or it felt uncomfortable. I've been someone who's always been comfortable outside of my comfort zone. And so my recommendation or my advice would be just to tune into that gut feeling and what feels right, and try to tune out the noise of what other people are saying, because you're really the only one who knows what's right for you.
That's so good. What was the hardest part in your life? If you had to say, hey, like 18 to 23 was the hardest, or 30 to now is the hardest. Could you ever look back and say, this was the most difficult time of my life because of ...
I think that my entire adult life has been difficult in a lot of ways. I look back at, again, some of the things I share in the book, trauma that happened in my teen years and how painful that was, and how that has influenced my life to this day. Yep. And I would say that probably the final 3 years of my drinking were really difficult. 2019 through 2021 was really a tough time for me, where I was feeling really lost. I mean, kind of similar to that 18-year-old girl. I was back in that space of, not really knowing where to go, not being able to tune into my intuition, because alcohol, unfortunately, is something that blocks that channel. It blocks that energy from source and from our higher power. And we can't really tune into that when we are putting in substances that disconnect us from ourselves. And that has been something that for me in my sobriety, and I know from so many other people that I speak to in the sobriety space, that elimination of alcohol allows us to really reconnect to ourselves and tap into that intuition more.
Yep. And from that 2019 until 2021 was obviously the pandemic. You were living back both in Jersey and New York, back and forth, if I'm not mistaken, correct? You're back and forth. So do you know, are there stats that show during the pandemic how many more people started drinking alcohol? Because I remember hearing people, and even some of the friends I have were like, they were bored, they're at work, some of them, and they're drinking at work because there's no one around.
Totally.
They're bored. I'm like, wait, you're drinking at work? And it wasn't like they just wanted to drink. It was the whole situation.
Yeah.
But do you know, were there stats that prove for kids, adults, pros, that people started drinking more?
Yeah, so there's some really interesting research that came out later in 2021. And actually, I think that the increase in drinking during the pandemic has spawned the evolution of sober curious and what we're talking about now in the world of shifting drinking behaviors.
What's sober curious?
So sober curious is this term that we use to describe people who are curious about alcohol elimination. So it is essentially to say that you maybe aren't going to go fully sober, you're not going to quit drinking entirely, but you're exploring cutting back and what that might look like. So this has been a massive trend, and it has contributed to things like Dry January and all of the rise in these non-alcoholic beverages and things like that. And there were some really interesting stats that came out of the pandemic. There was one study that showed, especially in women, there was a 41% increase in drinking in women who had already drank on a regular basis. So we saw pretty massive increases in alcohol use during that time, and mostly because of stress, right? People are in a different environment, especially women maybe who are now homeschooling their children and working and, the family's all home. Right. I'm sure you're laughing because you saw it with Mel, right?
we were all under one roof, that's for sure.
Yeah. So we had, and then there were people like me who were isolated, right? That I was living by myself. I'm working from home.
Isolation.
I'm hardly ever leaving my house. At that time, I mean, the pandemic really, I always liken it to, my drinking was probably always like a pot on the stove that was simmering. But the pandemic like cranked up the heat, and now the pot's boiling over, right? And at the end of my drinking, I had gone from being someone who was maybe drinking 4 or 5, maybe 6 days a week to 6 or more likely 7 days a week, and had started drinking earlier in the day. Because exactly like you said, while I'm working from home, I'm not leaving. I needed something to like bookend the day to cope with my stress. And that was something that happened to a lot of people. So I think it sent people into maybe their quote unquote rock bottom sooner.
Into their craziness.
Into their craziness.
And I'm not going to go down this alley, but it's interesting because when I look back at that and even the trends that happened, not just drinking, but people, everyone home and all that craziness, is when you think about history and time, one of the worst things that you can do to a human being is put him into confinement. Solitary confinement is one of the worst punishments that a person, man or woman, could ever have. And that's exactly what happened to a lot of people. There are still people today trapped in solitary confinement in their homes, wearing masks all the time. Like it's become, to some people, it's jacked some people up.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, you can start drinking more than normal, or start drinking whatever it is. But again, it's just interesting how the shift in 2020, 21, and even 22 has left some people like a war has happened, go step back into World War II, and you look at the prison system and solitary confinement. It's been kind of nutty when you think about that. Is we need to break that. And that's one of the things I think why even gyms and studios and communities, heck, this darn podcast community, it's why live events, I love last night. One of the things I talked about on last week's podcast was the live event. Show up live, people. There's nothing like a live event. There's people, there's high fives, it's live event. We're not in dang solitary confinement. Anyway, I don't want to go on my soapbox because it's just so important. Human beings are designed to be around other human beings, to be in a community, a pack, a tribe of people. Not always, but if you are in solitary confinement in your home all the time, I don't care how much working out you do, you need to make sure you're around other people, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you end up drinking and doing stupid stuff, and the further and further you isolate, you're in prison.
Yeah.
You're in prison.
Yeah, and the other interesting side of that, too, is that even socializing for people, though, is very closely linked to alcohol. Most people struggle with that social element, especially if, they're thinking about quitting or cutting back. A lot of what ties us or keeps us maybe in the behavior of drinking is the fear of, well, what do I do when I socialize? All of my friends drink, or my partner drinks, or my family drinks, and it's so ingrained in our habits and our socialization. And that, I love that you mentioned community, because that is a huge part of, if you are thinking about changing your alcohol behaviors, finding community, finding people who are like-minded. The wellness space is a great place to go, because a lot of those 100%. People are thinking about more healthful behaviors. But I also come from the wellness world too, where you can definitely find people who want to drink too.
Sure.
And so, but the community element is really important, especially because alcohol is so tied to our social nature too.
Well, I want to dive into the book after all this talk. That was good. That was good. I want to go into the depths of some of that. And I want to start with the book. And by the way, when you say the book, Brooke just came out the end of December 2023, How to Eat to Change. How to Eat to Change How You Drink. And I love the title, but I love the subtitle as well. Heal your gut, mend your mind, and improve nutrition to change your relationship with alcohol. And one of the things, I read the entire book cover to cover on the plane ride out here, despite seeing different parts that Melanie was she had devoured this book. She devoured this book in like a couple days. But your dedication, and the dedication, honestly, the one I know you dedicated it to your grandma and to the little girl. And it says, to the little girl who fought the battles so that I could show up for my destiny. I see you, I feel you, I love you. Talk about that.
Yeah, so that's the 18-year-old Brooke and the 12-year-old Brooke and the 8-year-old Brooke who loved Jewel, and as I mentioned, I've always been someone really emotional, and I've gone through some stuff in my life, some hard stuff, and when I look back at how far I've come and where I am today, I have to thank that girl who just kept trudging forward, even when life was really hard, even when, I was struggling, and in some of my hardest times, that girl kept moving forward so that I could show up here. And that's really freaking cool. And so I'm excited, and I'm really grateful for her persistence and her resilience and her drive.
What do you think that little girl would say to you today?
I think she would say she's really proud of me. And I think she would tell me that she knew that we would get here. And that's why she did all that hard work, and that's why she kept moving forward, because this isn't, when I look at this experience and I look at this book and the work that I've been able to do, I'm really grateful and I'm really proud of myself, but this work isn't for me. This work is to help other people. And that's our purpose, ours being mine and hers. So it's really, I say that because, people, we're all at different points in our lives right now. Everyone has goals and dreams. I had goals and dreams, and I never thought I could do that. And, alcohol elimination for me really helped me achieve those goals. And that's why I feel so passionately about sharing that, because I know so many people are struggling with this topic, and they're struggling with, maybe letting alcohol go, or they're struggling with, these different elements. And I'm so grateful that I get to use my experience in nutrition and bring this kind of new approach to people that they can, explore something different and see if maybe it will help bring them closer to their goals too.
In a nutshell, why did you write the book?
I wrote the book because the idea came to me like a lightning bolt, and I didn't feel like I had any other choice. In a good way, not in like now I have to do this thing, in a way that, oh my gosh, I have this message that I have to bring to people.
And you were sober for how long at that point?
When I had the idea for the book, I was only sober for 3 months. But I ironically had written a chapter for a textbook in the months leading up to getting sober, and it was a textbook on integrative approaches to substance use disorders. And I wrote a chapter on nutrition and supplements for substance use disorders. And when I finally got sober in June of 2021, I used some of those tools that I had researched to support myself. Some of the supplements that I talk about in the book, some of the nutrition recommendations that I talk about in the book. And when the idea came to me in September of 2021, I had looked around at the kind of the trending space of sober, curious, and no one was talking about the wellness piece. We talk about, all of these other elements of addressing trauma and mental health and community and behavior change, which are all critically important. But alcohol is technically a macronutrient. We look at it from a science perspective as a macronutrient. So we can't pretend that there isn't a physiological thing happening in our body when we consume a lot of alcohol. So this is really about that. It's about the biology.
Yep. Well, there's a lot of great content in the book. A lot of great content. I was like, wow, you've done your homework. You've done your research on this. One of the things I love is I remember this vividly. You didn't write all of the book in Jersey or New York. You went to Bali to write some of the book. Explain why you went there and that experience.
Yeah, so this was very random, but I had someone suggested. It was the end of the pandemic. It was the beginning of 2022, and the world was kind of opening back up again. And I had gone through a breakup, and one of my friend's husbands was like, "Brooke, what are you doing? You own a business. You're writing a book. If I were you, I would just hop on a plane to Bali and go live in Bali for a while." And I was like, ha ha ha. Actually, that's a pretty good idea. So I went home that night, and I'm I'm looking at flights. I'm like, well, I could get a one-way flight to Bali for $500. So, I ended up looking into it. It was still the world was still kind of closed. I had to get a visa to go into Bali, and I had to do a little bit of footwork to get in there.
Yep.
But I went with a one-way ticket, and when I got there, they were like, "You're supposed to have a flight home," and I was like, "Okay, well, I don't," and they let me in anyway, which was good because I was already there, and I had planned to stay for about 2 months, and I was there for 4 weeks or so, and I had just booked my flight home a month away, so I was going to stay for 2 months. And I was coming down a set of steps that day, and I broke my foot. And I was in the middle of the jungle in Bali, and I had to go to the emergency room. And speaking of angels on this earth, there was their version of Uber. It's called Grab. There was a Grab driver who brought me to the emergency room from my hotel. And God bless this man. He brought me into the ER. He stayed with me the whole time. He translated for me in the emergency room, really an angel on this earth, because I was there by myself with a broken foot. What do I do? I'm, literally on the other side of the planet. So what's ironic is I had gone to Bali to start writing the book, but I really didn't, because I was in Bali. I was exploring. So I really believe that breaking my foot was the universe saying, okay, well, now you have to sit your ass down and write this book. Because then I came home and had nothing to do except sit home and start working on the book. So I had to tie a little bit of the Bali into the story, because it was part of the journey, and it was that was my first trip sober by myself, a solo trip. And I had traveled a lot solo before, but always drinking. And so it was a really amazing experience, and beautiful, beautiful place. and I had all the best fresh juices and fresh coconuts, so I wasn't even missing the alcohol.
Yeah. Sounds like you need to go back.
I do need to go back. It's a long trip. I have a little bit of trauma of breaking my foot there, but.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is I remember you sharing you were sitting near the beach watching all these people, and there were dates going on, husbands and wives, there were friends, there was all these socials, and you're sitting back just watching all of this, sipping your coconut juice, and everyone's drinking. And that you share this in the book, how so much of our social interaction and dates is built around alcohol. And you were sharing that in the book of the impact and impression that made on you. And I was thinking, like, putting myself in your shoes, sitting back from afar and watching that had to be very interesting as someone who was newly sober. You're watching, I was like, man, there's a lot of alcohol going down right now.
And that's the suggestion in the book is, like, next time you're in a space, like if you're at a restaurant or you're at a party or anywhere where there's alcohol being served, if you sit back and you kind of just take it all in and you just evaluate what's going on around you. It's really interesting because everybody's experiences with alcohol are different. Some people have been drinking since they were young and they drink all the time and it's a part of, their relationships, their friendships, their lifestyle. There's other people who can have a beer every once in a while and never think twice about it, right? Yep. And so it's really fascinating how some people get addicted and some people don't. Yeah. And that kind of started the discussion around the archetypes, the drinking archetypes that I talk about, which is really how, there are these different behaviors that we all have around alcohol, and that, again, you don't have to be an alcoholic or someone who drinks every single day to decide that you want to change your relationship with alcohol.
Yep.
It really comes down to you making that decision to say, maybe this isn't serving my life.
Right. Talk about that, because the whole book, it's an awesome book. Guys, pick up the book. But there's a lot of interesting parts. I love the story part. Your story is awesome. And obviously I'm intimately tied to it, being your unk. But there's a lot of great parts. But one of the unique parts, and as an avid reader myself, I was like, what makes this book unique? I think the 3 archetypes is one of the most unique aspects of the book. Obviously, your story is unique. Everyone's got their own unique story. It's awesome. But the 3 archetypes is unique. Can you just cover that briefly? Like, what are the 3 archetypes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let me tell you where that idea really came from, too, which is an important part of this is, when I got sober, I was someone who was drinking every day at the end, and most of the people who explore sobriety or historically have explored sobriety are people who drink every day, right? We kind of think, well, if you drink every day, that means you have a problem. If you, can take some time off, or maybe you only drink a few times a week, well, that doesn't mean that you need to stop or that it's problematic for you in any way. And when I quit drinking and I first started, I launched a community online, and I had started running some online groups, sobriety groups that were nutrition focused. And there were some people that came in that were like me and had drank every single day, but there were also a lot of women that came in and they maybe drank a couple times a week, a couple times a month, and yet they were still feeling like they, once they started, they couldn't stop, or that they they weren't necessarily going to explore full sobriety because they didn't feel like they had a problem, but yet they wanted to cut back and they needed some support on that. Mm-hmm. So being the scientist that I am, my question is always why? Why is one person going to go out socially and have one drink and be fine with that? And someone else might get kind of off on a tangent and have 10 drinks. And then someone else is drinking every single day. Like, what's going on there in the biology? What is, what's all happening there? So the 3 drinking archetypes were meant to define these other levels of drinking for people. So there's 3 drinking archetypes. We have the social drinker, who is someone that we just talked about. They drink mostly in social situations. They maybe drink a couple times a week or a couple times a month. But when they start, maybe they have trouble stopping. They have one drink and then it turns into several drinks. The second drinking archetype is the stress drinker. And this is someone who drinks mainly for stress. This is what we saw maybe more of during the pandemic. These are people that maybe have high-pressure jobs or high-pressure lifestyle. Maybe it's you're drinking at the end of a long workday to bookend the day. Maybe you're drinking a couple more days a week. You're not just drinking in social situations, but you're still not drinking every single day.
Yep.
The third drinking archetype is the habitual drinker. So this is someone who's more of the 6-7 days a week, maybe drinking for the stress reasons, in the social situations, for any reason, right? And this is someone who maybe has more of that biological kind of addiction to it. So the goal was to really give people these archetypes to identify with, and then we use those archetypes throughout the book to help guide some of the recommendations for food, nutrition, et cetera.
Right. And you did sneak in a fourth one, which I related to.
Yeah, so you're the fourth one.
I was the fourth one.
Is the nonchalant drinker. The nonchalant drinker, we don't talk too much about in the book,
Correct.
but the nonchalant drinker is that person who can have a beer and take it or leave it. They can have a drink here and there. They don't ever really crave it. They don't ever really feel like they have to have it. Alcohol doesn't play much of a role in this person's life. So I share that because there are people like you, and there are many nonchalant drinkers out there, but for the most part, this book is really geared towards someone who's feeling like, and I really believe it's a gut thing, right? If you're listening and you're saying, maybe this is something I should explore.
Yeah.
This is a great book to help you kind of continue exploring that.
Yeah,
and see what
I think that's a
like.
great point, Brooke, is it's not just for someone who is one of those 3 or 4 archetypes that, hey, you have to have a, quote, drinking problem to read this book. No. That's not the case at all. There's, as a matter of fact, great information. I love what you said about the gut aspect, because the more I study nutrition and obviously fitness and wellness, the gut has certainly been a buzzword the last several years, and there's some great nutrition information overall, and also to understand, even if it's not you, the people around us who may be one of those 3 archetypes that you're trying to figure out, your son or your daughter or your spouse or a good coworker or friend that you may be close with. And I really did like that aspect of the book. What are you hoping that this book brings to the world?
Before I jump to that, I want to just touch on the gut question quickly, because one of the really important parts of this book, the second part of the book, is where I talk about how alcohol affects things like the gut and our hormones and our brain and our nutrient status.
Go there.
All of the things that... I think, again, there's been a long period of time where we thought alcohol in small amounts was maybe healthy for us, that people drank because they thought that there were some health benefits to it because of the resveratrol. But really, alcohol it's a toxin. The reason why we feel drunk or tipsy when we drink is because it's poisoning our nervous system. And so that feeling that we feel is actually our body being poisoned, which is why we throw up if we drink too much, because our body is trying to get rid of the poison. So all of that to say that alcohol affects things like our gut microbiome. It causes imbalances in our hormones, our cortisol levels. Hormones for men and women can decrease testosterone production. It can increase estrogen in men, which we don't want.
No, we don't want that.
It can cause some of the imbalances that women experience in PMS and menopause symptoms. It can contribute to infertility for both men and women. But also one of the things that alcohol does is it lowers all of our nutrients. It decreases our B vitamins, our vitamin D, our C, our magnesium, our zinc. If you're an athlete and you are looking to build muscle and you're trying to optimize performance, alcohol is one of the worst things you can be putting into your body.
Correct.
And so the second section of the book is really juicy and meaty, and it's got a lot of this information and helps you understand how alcohol is really affecting these different areas.
Speaking of juicy, I got to share this with you. One of my favorite parts of the book. There's a lot of favorite parts, but one of my favorites. If you're looking, look, I got it starred right here. I got it little dog-eared and starred. This is kind of meatheadish, but that's me. I'm reading on the plane, and I always love, what can I get out of this book? Not just knowledge-wise, but I can actually apply it. And the recipe section in here is awesome. It's awesome because I'm always looking for new, different shake and smoothie recipes. Banana almond butter smoothie with greens. The maca green smoothie. And then there's some really good. The Dr. Brooks beet chocolate cherry smoothie. I'm like, what the? You've been holding out on me.
So,
you've never shared these with me.
I have to tell you something. Beets are by far one of my favorite foods to recommend, especially if you're healing your body from alcohol. But if you're trying to improve your energy levels, if you're looking to optimize your gut health, your liver health, beets are one of my favorite foods to do that. And I actually highly recommend them at breakfast time because they help with oxygenation, blood flow to the brain, so they can be good for stimulating focus, etc. So that smoothie is, I mean, all of my clients know this. Like, that's the one. That's my famous smoothie. And I highly, if nothing else, that's the best part of the book.
Why have you been holding out on me? Why? You didn't tell me any of this. I had to read the book. I had to buy the book and read the book.
I sent it to you.
But Melanie stole that one. I had to go get my own because Melanie stole it, and she won't let me do all my writing. I'm old school. I underline things. I make those things. I just show you the stars, and I'm ripping pages. It's not good. I like to devour these. And then my favorite, because I called her last night literally and said, pick up the ingredients on all of the breakfast smoothies. Mint chocolate chip super smoothie. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that sounds so darn good. So needless to say, I'm upset that you didn't share these with me earlier. But I'm really excited to get into them because they look so good and healthy and nutritious as well. So that being said, let's go to that question about the book. There's a lot of great sections. Your story is amazing. I'm so darn proud of you. The science section of the book is obviously packed with great content and the archetypes, but then obviously the functional aspect with all the recipes and support and different appendices with some areas that you can research on yourself. What do you hope this book brings to the world?
I really hope that we continue as a society talking more about alcohol in the wellness world and alcohol, addressing alcohol as part of health and wellness. Because until now, we're really just starting to touch into that. But so much of my experience is that there's a lot of people who are interested in health and nutrition and wellness and fitness and doing everything that we can to optimize our body. And for a long time, we haven't talked about how alcohol plays a role in that. And it is my hope that this book helps inspire more people to start looking at their alcohol intake and not only changing that behavior to optimize their health, but to optimize their life. And for me, removing alcohol removed all of the barriers in my life. All of the things that I had been struggling with since I was young were completely transformed when I took away that one thing, right? So everyone's always looking for what's that one thing, what's that one thing. If you drink alcohol and you feel like it's holding you back in some way, you don't have to be drinking every single day for it to be doing that. You might say that even that one day a week that causes you to be hungover screws with your whole week.
Yeah, true.
You know? And so I always share that, and people love when I say, you don't have to be a daily drinker for alcohol to affect your daily life. And that's something hard to kind of wrap your head around or to maybe change and transform. But all your job is right now, if you're listening and you're feeling like maybe it's something worth exploring, is just kind of follow that. Read the book, read a book, listen to some podcasts on Sober Curious, and just start to explore. You never know what's going to happen. For me, my entire life transformed. Several of my dreams came true because of just removing that one thing.
There's so much more I want to ask you, and we may need to have a second part two of this if you're open to coming
in San Diego.
In San Diego, because there's so much that we can go deeper and deeper into on so many different topics within nutrition and this. So if you're open to it, let's make it happen. But what I really love to know from all of you listeners, questions. What questions do you have? When this drops, the week this drops, I'd love to go live with Brooke on Instagram and have her on to answer your questions. But that's going to entail you to, number one, obviously listen to the podcast, and two, show up on the live and ask any questions you may have, or you can certainly reach out to us and ask as well. But I think it brings up a lot of thought. Wherever you stand in one of the archetypes, or you know someone that is in a situation right now that you're wanting to help, Dr. Brooke Scheller is an amazing resource for you to ask And I'd love to get your questions on that. Additionally, can you do us a favor right now? Just snap a picture of this episode and tag Brooke and myself on it. And I'm going to give you her information in a moment. But tag Dr. Brooke Scheller, tag me in your post, and help spread this message. The reason the Todd Durkin Impact Show exists is to create impact around the world. And messages like this from Brooke are really, really powerful. And you don't know if it can change or save one person's life, but I can guarantee you this one will today. Read the book, listen to the podcast, and share the podcast, and watch what happens. Brooke, what's the best way someone can reach out to you and follow you and ask any questions? What is that?
Yeah, so you can learn more about the work that I do at functionalsobriety.com. I'm most active on Instagram at Dr. Brooke Scheller. And I would love if you pick up a copy of the book wherever books are sold, your favorite place, Amazon. If you get the Audible, I'll read it to you. That's the joke I like to make. But it really is, so far, it's been really transformative for people in just, again, starting to kind of explore this new world. And I really believe that it will change your life if you're open to it.
Yeah. So be sure to follow her at Dr. Brooke Scheller. I'll put all of that in the show notes as well. You guys check out the show notes. The team and I put a lot of time into the show notes, that you have resources there for you. And when she says wherever books are sold, the book is international now. Woo-hoo. And has been dropped internationally. So check it out on Amazon and pick up the book as well. I hate to go there because you've got so much great things going on as we speak here in New York with the book launch. But if you were to project out, just like you did as a young girl, 18 years old, and life's confusing and all that. When I say what's next for Dr. Brooke Scheller, I'm not saying you got to go out 18 years, but with your dreams and visions and that kind of expanding, even in the last few months with all of the excitement around a book launch, what is next for you?
I really hope to be involved in some way in expanding the research in this area. That we have a lot of research coming out on the true health effects of alcohol, and these larger bodies of research that are looking at now kind of refuting the effects, the potential positive effects of alcohol. We're seeing some of these larger bodies of research come out. However, there's not a lot of research on things like nutrition and alcohol. And really, we know that it affects nutrient levels, but we don't know really what's happening like deep down when we're consuming high amounts of it. And we don't really know how much nutrition can we know a little bit, but not enough. And so I really hope that, I can help grow that body of research. I also hope to bring more of this information to the people who need it the most. Nutrition as part of rehab centers, as part of, these larger kind of treatment applications. There's so much to be done there. So I'm really excited about the future. If I had to look 18 years out, gosh, that's a long time.
That's too far.
A little too far. And I like to stay in the 30s, so I'll stay there for now.
I like that. And like I said when we talked on the phone a few weeks back, is a book is like launching and having a child. A book's like having a child.
Is.
And you got to be very present. And I hope that over these next few weeks and months that you can enjoy this child of yours, because it's all consuming. And the great thing about a book is it's everlasting. It's part of your legacy. It's not something that is a book launch and it's over in a week or two, or, this month of January 24. This is forever. And I hope that you can enjoy these next few weeks and months ahead. That's my hope for you, is all of the excitement here that I've been around just in the last 24 hours with the book launch party last night and the podcast and everything that you're doing, that you can really be present in the moment and enjoy this excitement, because the impact it's going to have nationwide and worldwide truly is going to be impactful. And I say thank you, Brooke.
Well, and thank you, Uncle T, because you've had a big impact on my life, and you've shown me that people from Brick, New Jersey can do big things and have an impact on the world, and that's really cool, and I'm really, really grateful for that.
I love you.
I love you.
Well, folks, that's a wrap, and I want to say thank you to Dr. Brooke Scheller for coming on today's show. When I say what makes your soul sing and what are you doing, what Brooke talked about today, and we shared from her book, How to Eat to Change How You Drink, truly, you got to look at your habits and the disciplines that you have. Or what are you willing to do and not do? What are you willing to add to your life? What do you need to eliminate from your life to be the best version of yourself? Whatever that is, do it. Do it. Put yourself in a community of people, of like-minded people that can support you in your dreams. And when you check out all of Dr. Brooke's information and her website, she is a part of several different communities as well that she can support you if you want to go down that angle. But you've got to make that decision of what you want with your life. And for that, I say thank you for joining us today on the Todd Durkin Impact Show. Having my niece, Dr. Brooke Scheller, on the show has just been an awesome experience, and one we've talked about for a while now, and we're definitely going to need to get back to it. Also, if you're in the San Diego or Southern California area, she's going to be doing a book signing at Fitness Quest 10 here in January. I'll put all of the information out on our social media as well as into our show notes as well. So take a look at all the information there. If you're in the SoCal area or you want to be in the SoCal area or you want to meet Dr. Brooke Scheller, come on out to Fitness Quest 10, get in a workout, and we'll do a book signing there and have a nice little shindig out that way. So without further ado, remember, always train hard, eat right, live inspired, and go create impact. Big news breaking out of New York City to San Diego. That's right, the Brooke signing. The Dr. Brooke Scheller signing of her book, The Brooke Signing, is coming to Fitness Quest 10 on Wednesday, January 31st. Be in the house. That's right, I'm teaching a class. I'm teaching my TD fitness class from 6 to 7 p.m., and then the one and the only Dr. Brooke Scheller will be doing a Brooke signing, a book signing, How to Eat to Change How You Drink. She'll be in the house from 7 to 9 p.m. Check it out. Be there if you can. If you want to be in Southern California, in San Diego, you want to work out and you want to hear a little bit about what's going on, I'll be interviewing Brooke. She'll be signing books, and it'll be a great evening to come out for an hour and a half, break some bread, have some fun, and let me tell you what, when we talk about getting better, January 31st, it's a Wednesday night. Mark your calendar now. Hit me up. Let me know if you're going to be there, and I can't wait to see you. Peace.